Proverbs 27:20. Hell and destruction are never full, for the eyes of man are never satisfied. God tells us our eyes, your eyes, my eyes, are never satisfied. It's interesting because God tells us that we should walk by faith and not by sight. You say, well, what does that tell you? Well, when we walk by what we understand, by what we see, by what we perceive, what happens is we begin valuing the wrong things, and we try to draw our satisfaction from what is visually apparent. You see, we as humans are so greedy and so unsatisfied when we go off of what we want. But on the contrary, God tells us how we can have satisfaction. As a matter of fact, when you read the book of Psalms, you see satisfaction, satisfied, satisfy. You see all of these different uses of the word satisfied. God tells us in his word how to be satisfied. You look at Psalm 17:15, Psalm 22:26, Psalm 36:8, Psalm 37:19, Psalm 63:5, just to name a few. And every one of them has to do with doing God's will, serving God, praising God, and being in God's house. In each case, satisfaction comes from serving God and doing his will. You see, far too often, I have found, when someone is unsatisfied with their family, it's because they're not happy with themselves. When someone is not satisfied with their monetary possessions, they are not happy with themselves. When someone is critical of others and not satisfied with the performance of others, many times they're not satisfied with themselves. Look at what God tells us in Proverbs 12. Verse number 11, he says, he that tilleth his land shall be satisfied with bread, but he that followeth after vain persons is void of understanding. That means that we're following after other people. We're setting our standard of living. We're setting the standard for ourselves and our family based on other people. But God tells us if we will till our land, if we'll put in the work on our heart, if we'll take care of ourselves, we'll be satisfied. Proverbs 14:14 tells us the backslider in heart shall be filled with his own ways, and a good man shall be satisfied from himself. You say, well, what does that mean? God tells us a good man. No one is good. You're right. Nobody's righteous all the time. But God tells us later that the steps of a good man are ordered by the Lord. You see, someone whose steps are ordered by the Lord will be satisfied. The Bible says from himself. That does not mean within himself, but that means that he will be satisfied with his life. You say, how can I be satisfied where I am? I think it's important we understand satisfaction is a choice, but not merely a choice to be satisfied, a choice to do things that satisfy. You say, how can I be satisfied with my marriage? How can I be satisfied with my family? How can I be satisfied with my ministry? How can I be satisfied with my finances? How can I be satisfied with myself? I see scripturally we need to work on ourselves and work on our relationship with God. Do you understand? Every aspect of your life is affected by your relationship with God and your relationship with yourself. You see, your dissatisfaction comes not from a lack of money, comes not from a lack of possessions. It comes not from a lack of position or prestige. Your dissatisfaction comes from a lack of your closeness to Christ and your satisfaction with yourself. You say, how can I be satisfied? Why don't you work on you? You change you. You correct you. You order you. You work on you, and then you yield yourself to God. I wonder this morning, and I know this is a bit of a different challenge, but I wonder today, are you unsatisfied? You say, well, if I just had a little more, hold on, are you satisfied? If you are unsatisfied, a little more of anything is just going to make you a little more unsatisfied. You say, well, if I just had a little more money, you'd be unsatisfied with a little more money. You say, well, if I just had a little more affection, you'd be unsatisfied with a little more affection. You say, well, if I just had a little more things, you'd be unsatisfied with a few more things. You say, how can I be satisfied in life? Scripturally, we see that we need to work on ourselves and continue yielding ourselves to God's way. I wonder today, are you unsatisfied? If the answer is yes, then you should ask yourself a few questions. How's your prayer life? How's your relationship with your Bible? How's your relationship with the ministry God placed you in? Are you happy with you? And I know many people. I know parents that snap at their children, they yell at their children. I know coworkers that are constantly blaming their other coworkers. I know children that are constantly blaming their siblings. I know school students that are constantly blaming their teachers and the staff at their school. May I tell you today, your unsatisfaction is because you are not happy with you. You say, well, you hit the nail on the head. And how do I fix it? You work on you. And then you yield yourself to God. You see, the only way to live a happy life, a satisfied life, is to work on yourself, constantly bringing yourself back in line with what God commands us to be. Hudson Taylor said the real secret to an unsatisfied life lies often in an unsurrendered will. You say, I am unsatisfied today with some area of my life. Are you happy with you? Are you happy with your relationship with God? May I say to you, the best news that I can serve to any people anywhere is that you are as close to God today as you really want. God does not move. God does not change. And God has given us constant access to Him. Might I encourage you, if you are unsatisfied, work on you and surrender your will so that you can look back, having tilled your own land, having followed the steps of the Lord, and being able to say, I may not have the most money. I may not have the most possessions. I may not have the greatest family. I may not be the smartest person in the room. I may not have the ministry that I thought I was going to have years and years ago, but I can say that I'm satisfied with the will of God. I have found true joy these last many years simply doing the will of God. And I can testify every time that I find myself unsatisfied with a person, with a relationship, with a situation. It is always because I'm unsatisfied with myself in the midst of that situation. Let me encourage you today. If you're unsatisfied, work on you and yield to God. We love you, folks. We'll see you tonight at 7.